on Prime Crime.
Her car's in the driveway. She's not answering her door. Her back door is wide open. So I don't know what's going on.
A murder, a disappearance, and a dismemberment.
This is really the case that never ends.
And the face at the center.
So we know that you're comfortable lying when it's appropriate. Yes.
Hi there, everybody. I'm Jesse Weber, and welcome to Prime Crime. This is where we do a deeper dive into the most high-profile and memorable true crime cases. This is part one of our story on the mystery and death surrounding one man over the course of almost 40 years.
MSD operator 348. Yes, hi. I'm in Desert Canyon, and my next door neighbor, one of our other neighbors, found her dog on the street yesterday. Her car is in the driveway. She's not answering her door. There's packages on her doorstep. She's not answering her phone. Her back door is wide open. So I don't know what's going on.
On December 24, 2000, Los Angeles police entered the residence of 1527 Benedict Canyon Drive and discovered the dead body of 55-year-old author Susan Berman.
Susan Berman was the daughter of an infamous mobster named Davy Berman. Initial speculation was that it was a mob hit.
Berman was shot in the back of the head.
Susan was afraid of her own shadow, well, not her own shadow, but everybody else's. Susan would not allow a stranger into her home. No way.
This is a gunshot wound to her head. That means the killer had to be near her. She had to trust the killer.
There was one person in Susan Berman's life that she was very close to.
I saw this girl who looked very, very pretty, and I went over and started talking to her.
That man was Robert Durst, the heir to the renowned Durst real estate empire.
We would spend a lot of time together. We could talk. We had the thing in common.
They both became incredibly loyal to each other. It was them against the world.
Durst is speaking with the producers of an HBO documentary entitled The Jinx, which aired in 2015. In that same year, Durst ends up speaking with an LA prosecutor named John Lewin as well.
You know, Susan was trying to reach you over that summer before she died, and you weren't returning her calls. Do you know why?
I don't remember any such thing. I remember...
It's these two interviews that would not only provide information on Susan Berman's death, but so much more. In order to understand Durst's connection to Berman, you have to start from the beginning with his first wife, Kathy McCormick Durst.
My oodles of education, she had zilch. I guess you would say I was marrying beneath me or something like that, or she was...
By most accounts, the early part of the relationship between Robert Durst and Kathy was very loving and caring. But as time went on, his relationship with Kathy began to be very strained.
And was the dominant person in the marriage.
I think she kind of got tired of some of the I mean, you know, she got tired of...
Absolutely.
He began to become abusive towards her.
By 1981, our life was half arguments, fighting, slapping, pushing, wrestling.
During that time, Kathy went to nursing school and then to medical school. As she became more independent of Durst, he became more controlling and more violent.
I was basically saying, get the heck out. And she was afraid, but she thought she could handle him.
Kathy and Robert's relationship came to a screeching halt on January 31st, 1982. After Kathy left a dinner party in Connecticut, it's believed she went back to the home she shared with Durst in South Salem, New York. Kathy then vanished. In fact, there have been no confirmed sightings of her ever since.
If you think Kathy's okay, if you're trying to figure out what's wrong with her, the first thing you do is you call her family and you go, hey, have you seen Kathy? It's just a weird, you see what seems strange about calling the police first?
Because I didn't feel like talking to her family and friends.
Durst has always maintained that the last time he saw Kathy, he drove her that night to the train station in South Salem, where she got on a train headed to New York City.
Reported her missing is their problem. Put her on the train, she came to the city, I don't know where she is.
He was the last person to see Kathy alive. He lied to police investigators.
Then you went to the mayor's.
Yeah, that's what I told the police. I was hoping that would just make everything go away. I didn't go to the mayor's, I took her to the train station, went home and went to sleep. I said, I called her. She answered the phone, and that puts her in the city.
You know that you're telling them something that's a lie.
There's also the matter of what exactly happened that night between the couple.
We didn't have a fight, we didn't wrestle, we didn't touch her.
But you did tell me in our last conversation that you did have a physical altercation that night.
Are you sure I told you that?
So we know that you're comfortable lying when it's appropriate.
Yes.
There were several factors that contributed to the fact that he did not get arrested. The detective who received the case, Michael Struck, he made a series of major mistakes and lapses in judgment, including not following through on lies that Robert Durst told him.
There's something else to consider about Kathy's disappearance, or rather, someone else.
You know, I got Susan Berman to do it. I had somebody cool. And if I thought about doing something like that, I can't imagine doing it.
Coming up, what Susan Berman allegedly did that may have led to her own death.
Hi, this is Dan Abrams with exciting news for all of our Law and Crime followers on YouTube. You can now get the live Law and Crime Network with YouTube TV for all of your daily live trial coverage, legal news, expert analysis, and original true crime programs. Subscribe to YouTube TV today, and then locate Law and Crime in the channel guide. And for only $1.99 a month, you can add the network to your bundle. Watch Law and Crime every day with YouTube TV. We put you in the jury box.
Well, that's what I read. I read that they figured that Susan knew a murderer. The guy obviously was friendly enough to get up and, in back of her.
In 2000, a woman named Susan Berman is found murdered in her Los Angeles home, a gunshot wound to the back of her head. Years later, her friend, real estate heir Robert Durst, sat down for separate interviews with documentary producers and an LA prosecutor named John Lewin. In their discussion of Berman's death, they revisit another mysterious moment in Durst's life when his wife, Kathy McCormick Durst, vanished in 1982. There's one odd aspect to Kathy's disappearance that may connect these two women.
You know about the call to the dean, right? That call was a big problem for New York because they're going, wait, if Kathy is dead, how can she be calling?
The day after Durst claims he dropped Kathy off at a train station in Westchester so she could travel into New York City, the dean of Kathy's medical school received a call from someone claiming to be Kathy, saying she was ill and couldn't come in for rotations.
I don't think Kathy called. Do you know who I think called? Any guesses?
The movie and Andrew was under the opinion it was Susan Berman.
Okay.
She would have said no.
Kathy Durst would never have called the dean of the school, and she would never have complained of cramps, abdominal problems, and diarrhea. Susan would always complain of her gastric problems.
If Susan Berman really covered up a potential crime for Durst, then why is she dead?
Susan Berman was killed in December of 2000. 2 months earlier, the Westchester District Attorney's Office was reopening the investigation into Kathy Durst's disappearance. And that really spooked Robert Durst.
Susan told me that she'd been contacted by Los Angeles detectives and New York detectives, and they want to come talk to me.
Susan Berman was killed because she was a witness Susan Berman became a threat to him and his livelihood.
That wasn't true. They had not contacted her. Did you know what I just told you or no? Is that a new piece?
No, I did not know that they had not contacted
No.
her.
Susan lied to you about that. I think that Susan was trying to subtly squeeze you for money.
Susan would make a threat to anyone. And she was in desperate financial shape. He was her main man in that regard.
We know that you flew out here, San Francisco, on December 19th. I think, Bob, that you drove down to Los Angeles.
Killed Susan,
I do.
drove back.
You know, you don't take red-eye flights very often. Did you know that?
Very infrequently.
And usually you don't buy your tickets right at the counter. Would you agree?
Usually I make reservations.
Right. On December 23rd, you end up buying that ticket at 10 at night at the counter in San Francisco. Just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm just not going to be able to answer that because I just don't.
Okay. Hard to explain.
Unusual.
He gets there just before she is killed, and he leaves right after she is killed, and he has a plane ticket in his own name.
There's one piece of evidence unlike anything else. After Berman was murdered, a letter was sent to the Beverly Hills Police Department. The letter, postmarked the day before police discovered Berman's body, was imprinted with Berman's address and the word cadaver.
You're writing a note to the police that only the killer could have written.
It's the misspelling of the word Beverly that's particularly strange. In Durst's conversation with the producers of the Jinx, he's confronted with a different letter he wrote to Berman.
And who you sent it to?
Susan Berman, 1527 Benedict Canyon, Beverly Hills, California. Beverly spelled wrong.
So obviously I want to ask you about the cadaver note.
Same misspelling. Well, I mean, the writing looks similar and the spelling is the same, so I can see the conclusion the cops would draw.
So I guess the question is, did you write the cadaver note?
No, I didn't write the cadaver note.
And can you tell me which one of these you wrote, or which one you didn't write?
No.
Up next, Robert Durst ends up leaving New York and he finds himself in Texas, but his plans soon lead to death.
You're not going to go and try to cut through the bone like I did, which was hard. I hated being a fugitive. I was the worst fugitive the world has ever met.
Back in the early 2000s, eccentric real estate heir Robert Durst had a problem. In New York, an investigation was reopened into the disappearance of his missing wife, Kathy McCormick Durst. In California, he had been linked to the murder of his best friend Susan Berman, an alleged witness to the suspected killing of Kathy. In order to escape media attention, he decided to move to Texas, but his troubles don't end there.
He moved to Galveston, Texas, disguised as a woman named Dorothy Siner. He rented an apartment. Across the way from him in another apartment was a guy named Morris Black. Robert Durst and Morris Black ended up spending a lot of time together.
Yet things began to sour between Durst and Black, and on one fateful night, an argument between the two turned deadly.
Morris, get out of here. I don't ever want to see you again. He takes the gun out. I grab him and the gun, and we fall down in the kitchen. The gun goes off and shoots him in the side of the face.
Robert Durst shot and killed Morris Black. He claimed he acted in self-defense. But is that true?
Robert Durst began to let his guard down. He told Morris Black about Janine Pirro's investigation. It gave Morris Black the knowledge specifically of what Robert Durst was running from. That became a huge piece of evidence of Robert Durst's motive for killing Morris Black, particularly as the evidence came out that Morris Black was starting to jam up Robert Durst for money.
What went through your mind?
I can't go to the police. My neighbor is lying on the kitchen floor. Oh, and by the way, I'm a rich guy from New York, and my first wife disappeared, I'm going to have to dismember this body.
Robert Durst was arrested for the murder of Morris Black after Morris Black's body parts were found on the beach of Galveston.
Cutting somebody up with a saw is a really difficult thing to do.
I agree.
And you've done that now twice, correct?
I'm not gonna go there.
Okay, all right.
Once.
Okay, I gotta ask.
In his explosive trial in 2003 for the murder of Morris Black, Durst took the stand and admitted he chopped up the body, but argued he killed Black in self-defense, a claim that was hard to refute given there was a critical piece of evidence missing.
Most body parts of him were found in plastic bags, except one, a kind of important one, the head, because it is the head where Robert Durst said he shot Morris Black in self-defense. Now, if the prosecution had Morris Black's complete body, they would be able to tell whether or not that was the truth or not.
The jury ended up acquitting Durst of murder.
I think some of the jurors were swayed by his celebrity and his wealth. I have to give credit to the defense team. They did an outstanding job. Even though the prosecution didn't do all that they could, I think there still was enough there circumstantially to prove his guilt.
Durst wound up pleading guilty to bail jumping and evidence tampering charges and would also violate the terms of his parole. After spending some time behind bars, Durst was released and would go on living as a free man. Yet Durst's life would change forever in 2015.
What made you do the movie?
Still sort of putting that together in my own mind.
Think all court shows are the same?
We're talking about your father. Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Think again. Judge Caprio rules with common sense.
I was having contractions. I was rushing to the hospital.
Inspector Quinn, what does justice demand? Jail?
And compassion.
I'm going to take the circumstances into consideration.
The best court experience I've had.
Clearly, Judge, he's been in a court before.
Get caught in Providence.
Hi, I'm Dan Abrams. In the exploding legal and true crime genre, Law&Crime is the only network that has it all.
Good evening and welcome.
This is a complicated case.
Don't really jump to conclusions.
Welcome to Prime Crime Tonight.
Another day of drama between both sides.
From multiple live trials daily to original and compelling programming, the Law&Crime Network is everywhere, and we invite you inside the jury box. This is Law&Crime.
Did not kill him by dismembering him. I dismembered him after he was dead.
In 2003, after a Texas jury acquitted Robert Durst of murdering his neighbor Morris Black and spending some time locked away on other charges, the real estate heir was ultimately released soon after. Despite circumstantial evidence that Durst may have murdered his best friend Susan Berman and was perhaps involved in the disappearance of his first wife Kathy McCormick Durst, Durst was not criminally charged in either case. Yet beginning in 2010, Durst did something odd.
Can't tell you how much I appreciate your sitting here and going through parts of your life with me.
I enjoy doing it.
Durst agreed to a series of interviews that would eventually be produced into a documentary entitled The Jinx, which would air on HBO in 2015.
I believe that at the heart of Robert Durst's cooperation in the documentary series that became The Jinx was another film called All Good Things. All Good Things was a fictionalized story about the Robert Durst saga, written by Mark Smerling. It was directed by Andrew Jarecki. Robert Durst apparently read the script. He wanted to reach out to Andrew Jarecki and see the film.
And this made me feel bad about the movie, Andrew. I mean, the thought idea that I could kill Igor, I don't like.
His major complaint about the film was that it depicted him killing his dog, Igor. And yet the fact that the film implies that he killed 3 human beings didn't seem to pay him any mind.
While Durst would say some controversial and arguably incriminating statements, There was one moment on the documentary that changed everything. At one point, Durst goes to the bathroom, yet he doesn't realize he's on a hot mic.
Killed them all, of course.
I certainly think the bathroom confession was an actual confession.
He likes to talk. He likes to tell a story. He thinks that he can gain information and then he can spin his story, not realizing that finally he was giving information on a microphone.
This alleged bathroom confession was broadcast to the country on the series finale of The Jinx, and that's not even the most shocking part.
On the eve of the episode of The Jinx airing, he was arrested in New Orleans, Louisiana, on suspicion of illegal possession of a firearm, possession of marijuana, and it was believed that he was going to fly to Cuba.
There are lots of things that I know, and I know it's tough, and I'm guessing right now you're probably nervous, is that right? And scared? I mean, it's, this is a terrible place to be.
The interview you've been watching of Durst and LA prosecutor John Lewin occurred right after Durst was arrested in Louisiana. The tapes from this interrogation and The Jinx would prove to be critical pieces of evidence in a brand new case spearheaded by Lewin.
I do cold murder cases, complex circumstantial murder cases. Probably 90% of the cases that I do, the person that I'm sitting across from, they're like you.
That case was the People versus Robert Durst. After 15 years, the real estate heir was officially charged with first-degree murder for the killing of Susan Berman.
This is really the case that never ends. Hopefully it won't end until justice is achieved. There's been so many things that have happened. I mean, this is just the most unusual situation ever. John Lewin is putting it all together and making it all make sense. I mean, there's all these different parts, but they're all connected and they all mean something. And I think by the end of this trial, everyone's going to really understand everything that's happened.
Well, that's part one of the Robert Durst saga, and there is so much more in our part two episode. There are moments that we haven't shown you yet from his police interrogation that may leave you shocked. But not only that, there's Robert Durst's murder trial. Little preview, he took the stand, testified for 15 days, and had a back and forth with prosecutor John Lewin that was something straight out of a movie. So that's all we have for you right now on Prime Crime. Leave us your comments on Instagram and Twitter with the hashtag PrimeCrime. As always, thank you for joining us, and until next time, be safe.